Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Beyond the Books podcast, season 2024, episode 1. Happy New Year. Today, I will be talking about several subjects that have to do with the meeting of the fourth grade math and reading proficiency. It begins with early education. We'll look at what early education looks like, and then I will relate my experience with teaching preschool many years ago. Good afternoon. Many factors contribute to whether a child reaches the fourth grade proficiency in reading and math. Number one, access to high quality early childhood education, healthcare, and family support. A home environment where parents and guardians or caretakers expose them to reading books, playing games, and indulging in stimulating conversation. Number three, a preschool that has high but realistic expectations for its students, good teachers, rigorous learning opportunities, a supportive environment, and adequate resources. What are the factors that contribute to reaching fourth grade proficiency? Socioeconomic status may have food insecurity, housing instability, or exposure to violence. They face barriers to learning, such as chronic stress, poor nutrition, and lack of access to quality education and healthcare. Number two, racial and ethnic disparities. Children who belong to racial and ethnic minority groups are more likely to experience racism and discrimination, which can limit their opportunities to even find a quality school. The first thing I'm going to address are the attributes of a preschool a parent should consider in their child's early development. Number one, does the child have access to quality does the child have access to quality early childhood education? In other words, a great preschool. Does preschool have a great teaching team? Is the school safe and secure, both inside and out? Is the school the right fit for the child? Schools are not a one size fits all. Does the school have good hardware and equipment that is safe and sturdy? Does the school focus on the health and nutrition of the child? In an ideal world, people can ask those questions. However, many parents do not have many options for their children to get a quality education. I taught in a preschool for a year or so when I was directly out of undergrad music school. While working, I was simultaneously going to grad school as a double major in voice performance and musicology. Perhaps for some kids, but not for all. The parents thought that it was good. They wanted their children to rise above the socioeconomic position that they were in, paycheck to paycheck, going into debt for unexpected expenses, etc. Many things were wrong that I or they couldn't see at the time. From the outside and inside, the school was clean and well maintained. There was nothing unsafe about it from a building standpoint. The owners were well dressed, polite, and well spoken, and congenial with the parents. Plus, their own son and daughter attended the preschool. The school was in a predominantly black neighborhood, and I did not have a car. I rode my bicycle before and after dark in a neighborhood white people only drove through, and that was rarely. I took the job a couple of years after a time of fairly serious unrest. Translated, the black folks were barely being treated as even second class citizens. The same stereotyping and calling that has existed since slavery, such as black people are not educated, they are not intelligent, they lack morals, and possess absolutely no worth ethic. I should add that I substituted the word black people. That was not what they were being called. Understandably, the black community was rightly fighting the stereotypical racial epithets and discrimination, particularly in the employment and incarceration fields. The people supporting the speech could not have been more wrong. The preschool was black owned and supported by black parents and their children. All the parents were leaving their kids to go to work at various, mostly low paying jobs. They went to work every day and on time. There were two white students, a brother and a sister, whose mother was very loving toward them, and they adored her. However, there was a problem at home. Her occupation was prostitution. Her various boyfriends paid for her rent and for the kids' preschool. I believe she contained most of her work to when her kids were at school, but it was later obvious, not always. So, examining the characteristics of the school, did the preschool have a great teaching team? One teacher was the wife of a Pentecostal preacher. As far as I saw, She planned her lessons well and treated the children equally and fairly. However, she was extremely rigid in her demeanor, grimmer than the Grim Reaper himself. There was no outpouring of support, affection, or caring for the preschoolers. It was all cut and dried business. There were two white teachers, a Catholic nun and myself. Both of us had education degrees, and the nun was very loving and affectionate. She planned her lessons well, and she was very much loved by the children, and she loved them. I believe I was a good teacher, although inexperienced. My class had 24-year-olds. Can we say overcrowded and poor teacher student ratio? We painted a mural of a frog on the wall for a class project. We read stories, did the ABCs and numbers, sang songs, played drums and other instruments. I introduced them to a well known children's theme from the opera Hansel and Gretel. I played the recording and they acted it out. The kids loved it. They were so excited about it when they went home. It was a whole new world. But when they came back the next day, they were listless. Their parents had told them it was stupid and useless. What they wanted to know was how opera would help their kids get ahead. It wasn't practical, and it wasn't part of their culture. I couldn't tell them that once I was in the same boat, and it did get me out of it. This preschool was easy to get to for the parents. The hours were adequate, 5 a.m. to 6 p.m., to get to work on time and get the child if they had to work late. The owner would stay late if they called, but it had better not happen more than once or twice. However, there was no other school anywhere close by. It was also the only one that was easy to get to and affordable. The school had good hardware and equipment that was safe and sturdy. However, nutrition was another matter. Meals consisted of whatever cost the least. Lunch consisted of one fried chicken wing, half a slice of white bread and butter, no vegetables or fruit, sometimes a cookie, and a small glass of milk. If the kid was really hungry, they might get some more bread. The snack was white bread and butter, occasionally peanut butter, and a small glass of milk. What were the kids' home life like? I don't know for sure. But when parents are getting home at 6 or 6:30, having to fix dinner, getting the kids ready for bed and get them back to preschool at 5:30 or 6 the next morning, I doubt there was a lot of quality time spent reading books, playing games, and having detailed conversations. It was probably go watch TV or play with your brothers and sisters until I can get supper on. Then there would be dishes and bath time, perhaps a bedtime story. There was probably no extra money for educational toys and a lot of books and learning tools. Paying tuition was a stretch. In terms of socioeconomic status, I believe the two little white children were probably at the very bottom. They were very thin, the boy was angry and temperamental at times, and at others sweet and innocent. Both always had dark circles under their eyes. They saw things that they should not have. The owner caught the 4-year-old boy acting out, having sex with a little girl in the playhouse, although they were both clothed. I'm sure he imitated what he had seen. However, the owner grabbed him roughly by the arm and beat his legs with a switch, leaving red welts while in the middle of the backyard. The white mother was in no position to complain to anyone. The owner was not in the habit of sparing the rod, as evidenced by the scars on her own son's back as they ran through the sprinkler. He, too, was a child that was exceptionally sweet and sad. He had been struck with a belt so many times that there were layers of scars. The daughter, on the other hand, wore very expensive clothes, took ballet lessons, and was exempt from punishment of any kind, much to her detriment. At age 8, she was already entitled and egocentric. I often wonder what happened to the owner's son and the little white boy. Both were extremely sweet and sad little kids. I hardly think that being brought up like they were would be beneficial. After that incident, I began to notice that my checks seemed to be the incorrect amount. I went in and asked the owner, and she made some excuse that it must be some mistake. I went and talked to the nun about it, and she said that she just handed her check over to the convent. She never looked at it, but she would ask their bookkeeper to check. It turned out that she had been being shorted the entire 3 years she had been there. We both quit, and we didn't report any of it. Why? How does an owner of one small preschool live in a luxury house in the country, have a private plane with their personal hangar, drive what would have been the equivalent of a high end SUV had they existed then, and live like that by owning a preschool? Both of us were afraid to report to the police. That style of living did not come from their business. The husband did not have a high powered job. We probably should have gone to the police, but were afraid. Some of the kids' schooling was paid for by the state benefits, and she was probably cheating there by exaggerating the attendance. She knew where I lived and could be vicious when angered. I was 25 years old, newly divorced, working in a minimum wage job, and going to graduate school. I was too afraid to go to the police because of what can of worms it might open. It weighed on my conscience then, and it still does. At the time, I was just too afraid, and I had no one to ask for help. Sometimes it's very hard to take the high road. Beyond the Books, The Language of Success can be found on my website, susanstoderl.net/podcast, or on YouTube channel at writer Susan Stoderl, the second and fourth Tuesday of each month.